This video is going to be a continuation of what you worked on in the last EE.4a video, where we are solving 1 and 2 step equations. Last video, you learned about this strategy of backtracking to solve an equation. We are going to move away from that and move more towards solving using just algebraic solving. So again, if you had the equation x plus 19 equals 21, I didn't mean to underline that. If you had this equation, you would set up a backtrack saying, here's the variable. What happens to the variable? You add 19 to it. The result is 21. The inverse operation of plus 19 is minus 19. And when we go backwards, 21 minus 19 is 2. Now, when we're doing algebra, we're going to set it up like this. You start with the equation x plus 19 equals 21. You want to draw a line down the middle to keep the two halves of your equation separate. Now, an important thing about solving equations is that it is all about balance. If we think about this like a scale, the left side of the equation is some mystery quantity plus 21, or plus 19, I'm sorry, and the right side of the scale is 21. These are equal, so that means they are balanced. In order to keep the two sides balanced, we can add, subtract, multiply, or divide as long as we do the same operation to both sides, and it will keep the scale balanced. So in this case, we look and say, what's happening to the variable? Just like we do with backtracking. Here's the variable x. What's happening to it? 19 is added. How do you undo add 19? You subtract 19. So subtracting 19 cancels it off of this side. In solving equations, we have to do the same operation to the left and right sides of the equation. 21 minus 19 is 2. We bring down what's left, which is x, and we're left with the solution of x equals 2. So it's the same solution, it's the same steps, but this is the way that we're going to start showing them instead of the back. Okay, now we've got the equation f divided by 3 equals 11. If we're backtracking, we start with the variable f divided by 3, the result is 11. The inverse operation of divide by 3 is times 3. That's a multiplication dot. And 11 times 3 is 33. That's how we show it in backtracking. Here's how we show it in solving an algebraic equation. When you put something in parentheses and write a number out in front, what operation is that? Multiplication. So what's happening to the variable? It's being divided by 3. We undo divide by 3 by times 3. Whatever we do to the left side, we have to do to the right side. So times 3 divided by 3 cancels. What's left is just the variable f. On the right side, 11 times 3 is 33. Same solution, we just showed our steps differently. Okay, and here's a longer equation. Remember, what's happening to the variable? We think of the same thing whether we're looking at it as an equation or whether we're putting the steps into a backtrack. The variable x is multiplied by 5. So the first thing that happens is times 5. After that, 19 is subtracted from the quantity. So the next step is to subtract 19 equals 26. We write that here. The result is 26. So what's the inverse of minus 19? The inverse of minus 19 is plus 19. And what's the inverse of times 5? The inverse of times 5 is divide by 5. So let's execute both of those steps. 26 plus 19 is 45. 45 divided by 5 is 9. So we get x equals 9. Now, when you solve an algebraic equation, you're going to do the same steps as we do in the backtrack in the same order. So you want to think about what's happening to the variable. We multiply it by 5 and then take 19 away. When you're solving an algebraic equation, when you're undoing these steps, you want to undo them in reverse order of operations. Another way to think about that is in the variable's story, what happens to it. Whatever happens last gets undone first. So we said 5x minus 19, the thing that happens last is minus 19, so we undo that first. Undo minus 19 with a plus 19, and do the same thing to both sides of the equation. Minus 19 plus 19 cancels, bring down 5x, 26 plus 19 is 45. Now we've got 5 times x equals 45. How do we undo multiplication? We undo multiplication with division. We're going to show it, make it look like a fraction. 5 divided by 5 cancels, bring down the x. 45 divided by 5 is 9. So using backtracking or using the algebraic steps, we come up with x equals 9 both ways. Alright, here's a long one. Remember, we did this one in the backtracking video. Here's a long one for us to look at. Look at the variable. Start with the variable and tell its story. The variable is h. What happens first to h? 6 is taken away from it. So we'll write that in. H minus 6. Because remember, you've got to follow order of operations. And that says do parentheses first. So first you take 6 away. Then you're going to do times 2. So write that in as our next step. Times 2. 6 is subtracted. Then we multiply by 2. And the last thing is that we add 1. Add 1 and the result is 9. Okay, so when we are solving this equation, I'm going to change colors because I have a feeling I'm going to go down into the black for this one. When we're solving this equation, I'm not even going to fill in the backtrack, but I'm going to use that as a guide to say what step to do first. Remember, we undo the last order of operations step first. So we're going to undo plus 1 first. How do we undo plus 1? Not with plus 1. We undo plus 1 with minus 1. Plus 1 minus 1 cancels. 9 minus 1 is 8. And we bring down all of what's left of the equation. 2 times the quantity h minus 6 equals 8. Now, what's the next step that we are going to undo? We undid this. The next step we need to undo is times 2. How do you undo times 2? By dividing by 2. 2 over 2 cancels. 8 divided by 2 is 4. Bring down all of what's left. H minus 6 equals 4. The last thing that's happening, or rather the first thing that happened in order of operations, or the last thing left to undo, is minus 6. We undo minus 6 with a plus 6, and I did run out of room just like I thought. And we're left with h equals 10. If we went back into our backtrack, just to verify that we did it right, inverse of minus 1 plus 1 is minus 1. That puts us at 8 there. Inverse of times 2 is divide by 2. That puts us at 4 there. Inverse of minus 6 is plus 6. 4 plus 6 is 10. So whether we use the backtrack or the algebraic solving equation, we get h equals 10. But we need to get more comfortable so that this is the way we solve at each and every time. Alright, a couple more examples for you to try. Do this one, follow along with me, and then the last few examples I encourage you to stop and try them on your own before you watch me solve them. We're going to take the backtrack completely out of it, and we're just going to solve the equation. So write down the equation, 3x plus 11 equals 23, and tell the story of the variable. What happens to x first? It's multiplied by 3. After that, 11 is added to it, and the result is 23. So we undo the last thing that happened to the variable. The last thing was plus 11. We undo that with minus 11. Whatever we do to the left, we have to do to the right. Plus 11 minus 11 cancels. 23 minus 11 is 12. Bring down what's left of the equation. We have 3x equals 12. Now what's happening to the variable? It's being multiplied by 3. The result is 12. How do you undo multiply by 3? With divide by 3. 3 divided by 3 cancels. Bring down x by itself. 12 divided by 3 is 4. We get x equals 4. Go back and either by writing down your check or by checking with mental math, plug a 4 in for this variable. If this x was a 4, the problem says multiply it by 3. So 4 times 3 is 12. Add 11 to that. 12 plus 11 is 23. So we got the right answer. This next one, write it down and try to solve it before you watch me solve it. All right, this one, what's the story of the variable? X is being multiplied by 2. The result is 37. All that's happening to x is that it's being multiplied by 2. So how do we undo that? 2 times something equals 37. You're going to figure that out by dividing both sides by 2. Get rid of that times 2 with a divided by 2. 37 divided by 2 is going to be 18.5. Now some people look at these solving equations and they say, I don't know the answer to that math fact. 37 divided by 2 can't be done. I must have done something wrong. Don't think that way. If you need to use your calculator to help you get the answer to the last step, then do. You can find half of any number. It doesn't have to come out evenly. Half of 37 is 18.5. Alright, now we've got x over 6 equals 7. X over 6 is another way to say x divided by 6. So x divided by 6, how will we solve that? Drawing our line. You're going to undo divided by 6 by multiplying by 6. X divided by 6 times 6, those cancel. 7 times 6 is 42. Bring down the x, and we get x equals 42. That one's not too bad. When you only have one thing happening to the variable, you only have one thing to undo, we call that a one-step equation. And these are the types of equations that a lot of times you're going to be able to look at them and get the answer. When you look at x divided by 6 equals 7, you should be thinking, oh, some number, when you divide it by 6, the answer is 7. It should jump out at you that that number is 42. But this is how we show our work. All right, last example. This one's got some negatives, but don't be scared. Write down the problem, try it on your own, pause me, and then come back to try it with me. All right, hopefully you have it solved. Let's solve it together now. What is the story of the variable x? First, it's multiplied by 6, then 4 is taken away. The result is negative 6. So 4 is taken away is the last thing that happens. The last thing that happens is the first thing that gets undone. We're going to undo minus 4 with a plus 4. Minus 4 plus 4 cancels. Look out. Negatives plus positives. Don't get confused. Negative 6 plus 4 is negative 2. If it was negative 6 degrees outside and it got 4 degrees warmer, you'd be at negative 2. Bring down what's left of the equation, and you're left with 6x equals negative 2. Now, what I was just saying in the last example about you should be trying to do some mental math, it might jump out at you that 6 times something is negative 2. When you multiply a number by something and the answer is smaller than what you started with, you know that this is going to be a fraction or a decimal. But let's do the work and find out. 6 times x, we need to undo that by dividing both sides by 6. Negative 2 divided by 6 is going to give you the fraction negative 1/3. Or if you put into your calculator negative 2 divided by negative 6, you'll get negative 0.3. Repeating, and both are fine answers.